Tombstone, Arizona definitely deserves its wild and woolly reputation, immortalized in history books and pop culture alike. If you want to know more about the town too tough to die, then grab your 6-shooters and get ready for the messed up history of Tombstone.
I didn't think you had it in you.
I'm your huckleberry.
It's nearly impossible to think of Tombstone, Arizona without immediately conjuring up images of gunfights and the legendary Earp brothers, but the infamous town had much quieter beginnings. Back in 1877, a silver miner named Ed Shefflin was making his way into the Dragoon Mountains in southeastern Arizona. The local soldiers told Shefflin that he was more likely to find his own tombstone before he located any silver, but the hardy miner proved them wrong. Upon striking a rich vein, Shefflin mockingly named his mine the Tombstone, and by 1879, a town of the same name had sprouted up near Shefflin's diggings. Of course, things quickly took a violent turn. Gamblers, saloon owners, and prostitutes descended upon the fledgling town, and even Shefflin himself must have been surprised that Tombstone grew so quickly. The 1880 census records only 973 people in town, but Tombstone's own website claims there were 4,000 to 5,000 there within a year. The website speculates that if you include less reputable characters, that figure could have been in the tens of thousands. Regardless of exact numbers, the town was growing fast. As a result, Tombstone's population needed their amenities like mercantiles, meat markets, churches, schools, and banks. Naturally, intermixed with such businesses were gambling dens, bawdy houses, and over 100 saloons. The criminal element was alive and well in Tombstone, what with various outlaws and gunfighters wandering into town. In other words, Tombstone was quickly crawling with less than reputable figures. Books, magazines, and movies are rife with stories about the life of Wyatt Earp. After all, he was a prominent figure in the incident at the OK Corral. But even history submits that Wyatt Earp's reputation is mostly myth. The simple facts are these. Earp was born in Illinois to itinerant farmers who moved to Iowa. When his first wife died, a grieving Earp left home and went to Kansas, where he fell into the shady side of life and was frequently in trouble with the law. His assistance in tracking a thief won him a job in Dodge City's police department, and he eventually became marshal. Around this time, he also met his lifelong friend Doc Holliday, as well as his girlfriend, former prostitute Maddie Blaylock. In 1879, Earp and Blaylock lit out for Tombstone, where Earp's brother Virgil was town marshal. Virgil gave Wyatt a job, and soon the Earps were joined by a third brother, Morgan. Legends of America states that with Virgil as marshal and his brothers as special policemen, the Earps became the law of the land in Tombstone. But Wyatt's life became a mess when, in 1880, he cast off Maddie Blaylock in favor of another woman, Sarah Josephine Marcus. A Jewish actress, Josephine was the girlfriend of Sheriff John Behan. Many historians claim that Josephine also was a prostitute with whom Behan had been cavorting for years. Either way, it just goes to show that during Earp's time in Tombstone, he wasn't exactly an upstanding do-gooder. Exactly how did all this go down? Here's the thing about the history of the true story of Tombstone. It's a little murky. Record keeping was, after all, iffy at best, and there wasn't really anyone documenting things as they happened. There was no evening news, so sometimes historians were just left to fill in the gaps as best they can. Born in Georgia, the temperamental John Henry Holliday began his adult life as a trained dentist, who unfortunately contracted tuberculosis shortly after hanging out his shingle. According to biography, Holliday turned to playing cards and a love of guns to pass the time. He'd already committed at least one murder, and possibly quite a few more, in Dallas when he met Wyatt Earp, and just where the two first crossed paths is up for debate. Regardless, around this time, he also met the love of his life, a woman named Big Nose Kate. Rumors abound that Kate originally had a fling with Wyatt Earp back in Dodge City prior to her move to Texas. Kate herself denied this, claiming that she met both Earp and Holliday while working as a prostitute and dance hall girl at a local saloon in Fort Griffin. As tempestuous as the relationship was, neither seemed to be able to quit each other. Instead, the couple made do by separating frequently. When the Earps breezed through Prescott, Arizona to convince Holliday to go to Tombstone, Kate went along. According to history, things started to go sideways in March 1881 when Wyatt was out chasing down some stagecoach robbers and ran across Ike Clanton. Clanton knew the robbers and struck a deal with Earp, presumably to turn them in. Then he changed his mind, and the next thing the brothers Earp knew, they were receiving threats from Clanton and his buddies. In the following months, according to Clanton's testimony at least, the Earps and Holliday began harassing Billy Clanton and his friends. On October 26, things came to a head with a 30-second shootout that left Billy Clanton and Tom and Frank McLaury dead. Wyatt and Doc were arrested and a trial was held, then thrown out. Months later, Virgil Earp was wounded and Morgan was murdered as revenge for the shootout.
The American West is a disgusting, awful, dirty, dangerous place. Look around you. Everything out here that's not you wants to kill you.
Today, visitors to Tombstone who visit the reconstructed OK Corral get to watch reenactors blow each other into eternity every single day. What many don't know, however, is that the shootout actually didn't take place in the corral. Instead, it went down on a vacant lot next to a boarding house where Holliday rented a room. That place was on Fremont Street, now known as US Route 80. Today's OK Corral is on Allen Street. So, in other words, visitors flocking to the scene of the shootout actually drive right over the original historic spot to get to the fake OK Corral. During the time the Earps and Doc Holliday were in Tombstone, they were active, at the very least by association, in the prostitution industry. Indeed, Wyatt left a trail of wanton women behind him as he traveled. As for Blaylock, she was working as a prostitute herself in the early 1870s. Blaylock was deeply in love with Wyatt, and by 1880, she was identified in the census as his wife. By the time of the OK Corral incident, however, Maddie had developed debilitating migraines and become addicted to laudanum. Earp threw her over for Josephine Marcus, and Maddie died in 1888 of an overdose. James Earp's wife, Bessie, was also a prostitute or madam, hailing from Wichita, Kansas, and she eventually moved with her husband to Tombstone. And even after marrying James in 1873, Bessie continued working as a sporting girl in Kansas. Did Bessie continue sporting once they arrived in Tombstone? No one really knows. And all of that is without even mentioning Big Nose Kate, who was even more notorious, and who had previously worked for Bessie Earp in a brothel in Kansas. Many women made names for themselves in the mining town. According to writer Michelle Floyd, they included such beauties as Dutch Annie and China Mary, who were buried in Boot Hill. These and many other women like them worked out of small rooms known as cribs, or dingy brothels where most made little money. More upscale bordellos were also available. According to writer Douglas Town, Tombstone offered an array of bordellos for every man's wallet, from the cribs to fancier parlor houses. The ladies therein paid what were called fines to the city for their licenses to operate. One license is especially interesting because the lady's name on the license is Sadie Joe of the Birdcage Theater. Historians are divided as to whether Sadie Joe was really Earp's lady Sarah Josephine Marcus. But if Sarah and Sadie Joe were one and the same, Earp had everything to gain and nothing to lose by granting her a license for prostitution. For about 2 more decades after the shootout at the OK Corral, Tombstone thrived, but all good things must come to an end. For Tombstone, that happened when the silver mines around town eventually began flooding after they reached a level of 520 feet below the surface. As mines closed, folks moved on. The 1900 census records under 700 people left in town. A 1925 film of the town reveals buildings with shuttered doors and broken windows as a handful of folks wander around the town. But it wouldn't be until the late 1950s that the former courthouse finally opened as a museum. More efforts would come to preserve the town thanks to the work of the Tombstone Restoration Committee. Meanwhile, business owners got to work restoring old businesses and creating viable ways to bring folks back into town in any way they could, including cheesy gimmicks like mechanical gunfighters you could duel with for a quarter. Tombstone might never have dusted its old bones off to rise to glory again if it weren't for Wyatt Earp. The famed lawman spent a number of years wandering around the West before moving to Los Angeles in 1901. Although he had trouble finding someone to publicize his own adventures, according to history, Earp was able to befriend actors like William Hart and Tom Mix. The guys were all ears as Earp embellished his stories about Tombstone. Before long, Earp was a Wild West hero and a welcome sight on LA movie sets as a consultant, the man who knew what really happened on the streets of Tombstone. Earp died in 1929, but in the wake of his funeral, dozens and dozens of westerns would come out in the years that followed. Famous actors like Henry Fonda, Burt Lancaster, and James Garner have all played Earp, while Hollywood legends like Victor Mature, Kirk Douglas, and Jason Robards have taken on the mantle of Doc Holliday. In more modern cinema, we've seen actors like Kurt Russell and Val Kilmer taking on the roles of Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday, doing what they do best at the OK Corral. And it just goes to show that some stories, even if you've heard them before, still capture the imagination. Tombstone's Chamber of Commerce points out that the Tombstone of today has been a National Historic Landmark District since 1962, a Preserve America community since 2009, and most importantly, it's a real community, lest anyone come in there in hopes of relieving historic properties of their treasures. Also, metal detecting and treasure hunting is officially off limits. Now a bona fide town of the tourist trade, Tombstone continues to be a film-friendly community, where filmmakers are welcome to set up their cameras and tell their own story about what really happened way back when, so long as one procures the proper permits. As for sights to see, reviewers tend to describe it more along the lines of an ultra-commercialized version of the Wild West than a museum-quality, well-preserved pocket of history. But fortunately, reviewers on TripAdvisor do highly recommend the actual museums to see the real history. But if you're looking for tacky stores, there are plenty, with names like Desert Eagle Trading Post, Fallen Angel Sweet Sin Parlor, and the Shady Lady's Closet. Fortunately, it seems that the people of Tombstone are incredibly friendly, unlike their gunfighting ancestors.
Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more grunge videos about your favorite stuff are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.